Our show sponsor for starts and sits is Aspire Drinks. If you go to aspiredrinks.com using the code Dween, you can save 15% on all of your orders. I just bought a 27-pack variety edition because there's so many different good flavors. It's green tea power energy drinks, less caffeine, more benefits, the refreshingly unextreme energy. Go and get some today using code Dween, and let's get back to the video. Welcome in, Dween Nation. This is your host, Justin Paez, alongside Janoah Agudelo. Week 6 is gone. Week 7 is here. Some of us are riding hot. Some of us not so hot. I will say I got the better of my brother here, Janoah, and our matchup last week, thanks to a beautiful Monday night performance from Bijan Robinson and Drake London. Thank you to you both. And we continue to move forward, which each week presents another challenge. And I'm really excited to discuss our starts and sits to help, Dween Nation win their fantasy matchups. But before we do that, how you doing, Janoah?
Yo, Dween Nation. Yeah, Justin, that was a tough loss there. Drake London, I hate you. And Bijan, I will never forgive you. And they tore my heart up in those beautiful red helmets that got Justin. Those Falcons uniforms are amazing. That's my only good thought out of that matchup. But I was able to win in another league, so I'm good. In our elite league, I was able to move up the standings there. So, hey, week 7 is upon us, Justin. Like you mentioned, it makes this week even more interesting, more fun. The anticipation's at all-time high because in the league that I lost to in, Justin, I'm 2-4, and I'm looking at the standings. It's not all that quite that bad. A win or two in the next couple weeks can push me right back into playoff standings. It makes week 7 interesting, Justin. And you know what? There's a lot of storylines with injuries that we didn't expect this last week. There's a lot of injuries, particularly in the NFC a conference where a bunch of star players left. And it makes a lot more of these matchups juicier. And we did not call this, last week. So that's why NFL is what it is, Justin. It's a beautiful sport. How can you not be romantic about football this time of the season?
I love your mindset. It is perfect. You're right. Sometimes you start out and you're 2-4, and you have just kind of the doubts that maybe your team's not built for the run. But there's so much season left, and you're right. It doesn't matter if you are 2-4, even 0-6. I know it's dim, but you can make the turnaround, make some trades, make a big waiver pickup. Go check out our waiver editions or buy low, sell high on our TikTok, because those are out there. But you're right. The season can turn around. And if you look at the top and you're like, man, that top team just looks unbeatable. Well, then you have a week where you lose Puka Nakua, or you lose Emeka Egbuka, or you lose Marvin Harrison. Like, it can happen, and it can completely switch your season. So you're right. Fantasy football is a story that is unpredictable, and I'm just going to continue reading every single week. But let's dive into these starts and sits. We're going to start at quarterback per usual, and I got Dak Prescott. He has been phenomenal over the last, just about all season. He has played to an MVP level, in my opinion, but his defense is horrific. That's why he's not kind of the top guy in MVP conversations. But for fantasy football, we love when their own defense is bad. And that has been great for Dak because he's had to throw the football a bunch. And this matchup against the Commanders, it's probably going to be the shootout of the week. There's probably going to be a ton of fantasy points scored. And the possible return of CeeDee Lamb. I love that at home. Give me Dak Prescott as my quarterback 1.
Justin, I'm going with you all the way there. I'm switching in the lead I lost you last week. I'm switching Justin Herbert into the start line for Dak Prescott. I love the matchup. And the matchup is beautiful. Just think of the storylines going to this game. The Cowboys only won 2 games. They have a tie on their record. They need to get a win. The Eagles lost last week. The Commanders lost last week. And the Giants, obviously they beat the Eagles, but, the Cowboys haven't seen the Giants yet. So I don't think they have had these. So pretty much, they have. Week 2? Week 2. So they have that victory over them. So I would say Dak Prescott now at home against the Commanders. Jaden Daniels there. They're coming off a loss too off Monday night against Chicago. And so you mentioned there's going to be a ton of fantasy points there. Not to mention George Pickens has been one of the best fantasy wide receivers in the past couple weeks there since the injury. You got Jake Ferguson at home is a great tight end. I'm looking at his numbers at home, Justin. Fantastic there in the past 2 years with Dak Prescott, past couple years. Even in 2023, at home, one of the best tight ends, Jake Ferguson. And then, it mentioned, they're a team now that's picking up offensively. They look a little bit different. They look a little bit more polished than last year when McCarthy was at the helms. But I like Schottenheimer as far as a fantasy coach that if you have players in his system, you're feeling good about it, especially at home. So I love the matchup. I'm starting Dak Prescott for sure in one of my main leagues this week, Justin. So I have nothing but to agree with you. Last thing you mentioned, CeeDee Lamb is looking to play here. We'll see if he practices by Friday. We'll kind of get that final practice report and kind of put our stamp on it if he's good to go. But regardless, Justin, I do like sleeper games. There's a guy that they're talking about here, Ryan Fluneroy. He's a target of Dak Prescott. Fluternoy, I'm pronouncing his for sure wrong. He's number 19. He's a guy that some of these fantasy outlets I'm looking into are talking about. He's going to be that good third guy with Turpin kind of questionable and Tolbert, who, is a guy that Dak Prescott could kind of look to potentially. But hey, I do like Dak Prescott. I hope he goes off. For me, I'm going to go with the guy that you could be kind of scratching your head, guys, if you're watching here for a couple of years. I've never been the biggest Baker Mayfield fan. I will admit it. I'm not going to act like I'm on the board now. But you know what, Justin? In the fantasy, he's kind of starting to warm up to me. I'm not going to lie. He's like one of those puppies you find in the street. You don't really like him at first, but your brother, your sister, they all love him. And then after like 4 or 5 months, you're like, you know what? This little pug is kind of cute. So you take him as in your own. You becomes a good uncle for the dog, and you love him. He's your second to go. Anyways, I like Baker Mayfield this week, and there's some questions going on with the receivers there in Tampa. Obviously, Mecca Ibuka got hurt. He's probably not going to play this week. Mike Evans is kind of questionable once again. We'll see what happens by Friday if he plays. Chris Godwin is another one in the air, but still, Justin, I like the receivers of Tess Johnson. I do like Sterling Shepard in a matchup that there could be a chance on Monday night where the Buccaneers are falling kind of early to a high-powered, Lions offense. Jared Goff. Guys, how much I love Jared Goff at home in Detroit. You know how much I love Jahmyr Gibbs. He's going to have a great game. Monty's going to get in the end zone for sure. And I feel like they could be down 21-6, kind of like 21-9, and Baker's kind of trying to play catch up. And if Mike Evans plays, it's even better, Justin. But you know what? It doesn't matter, Justin. Right now, Baker Mayfield is in contention for the MVP of the league, Justin. He's played well without the injuries. There's some injuries on the offensive line as well. It doesn't matter. He has shown his toughness. Even with Liam Cohen gone to Jacksonville, obviously he's doing a pretty good job so far as well. He's lost his coordinators, his top 3 targets. Not to mention Jace McMillan, I don't even think has played all year. He was a guy that Baker Mayfield kind of relied on with Mike Evans in and out of the lineup last year. And so no Jace McMillan, no Ibuka, no Godwin, no Evans. I don't care, Justin. He's still going to have a good game with or Tess Johnson, who I like, or Sterling Shepard, or maybe a Rashad White gets 2 receiving touchdowns. Our Baker can run it himself. I don't care what it is, Justin. This offense is fantasy proof. Baker Mayfield is the MVP of the league so far, Justin, through 6 weeks. He is the MVP. And now he does a matchup when he goes to Detroit, where it's going to have high shootout implications. He's going to be playing catch up. By the end of the day, Justin, of the night, he's probably going to have 303 touchdowns. They might not win, but still, it's going to be a great fantasy game for Baker Mayfield on Monday night. Not to mention, the last time he was on Monday night against my Texans, he was pretty phenomenal. A big-time run on 4th down. He's a great quarterback this year in fantasy.
Yeah, he's been phenomenal, and I agree. He is the clear MVP leader as of week 7, or going into week 7. He has been so good. The thing that scares me is, in a TikTok earlier this week, I said that he can play with anybody. Like, if he doesn't have his wide receivers, he's making it work. He did that last week. You lose Ibuka, and you make it work with Tez Johnson getting a touchdown. Cameron Johnson, who we don't even know, gets his touchdown. But I do have some reservations going into this game on the road. I think Detroit's upset that they lost last week. I know it was a tough game against the Chiefs. I think that the defense for Detroit locks in a little bit. Baker Mayfield's still getting you around 20, 25 points. I don't know if he's got the ceiling this week as to normal weeks, but it changes if Mike Evans plays because I know he is questionable. So I still like Baker Mayfield. We'll move to running backs where I got Bill Croskey-Merritt. He has become the lead workhorse back for the Commanders. I've really liked what I've seen from him. Obviously, a couple weeks ago was phenomenal. Last week wasn't as special against the Bears, but he's still getting all the usage there in the running game. And they play the Dallas Cowboys. You can't ask for a better matchup than that. We saw Rico Dowdle go bananas last week against them, over 200 total yards. We saw Breece Hall had 20 points against them, and the Jets suck. We saw Josh Jacobs go for 2 scores and over 100 yards against them. He's been balling. So it's happened all season, especially over the last few weeks. So I love what Ja'Cory Croskey-Merritt or Bill Croskey-Merritt's going to bring. Plus the Commanders, knowing that the Cowboys offense is very explosive and will score at will, They're going to try to keep the ball out of the hands of Dak Prescott, running the football more. I think the same story will go with the Dallas Cowboys as well, wanting to keep the ball out of Jaden Daniels' hands, which I'll pass it to you now for your start of the week.
Yeah, Justin, I'm going to go with Javonte Williams. I think this matchup overall, it's 3 o'clock, 3:25 in Jerry World. I mean, Justin, what could go wrong? This is a showdown, divisional showdown. There's a lot of storylines to it. Jaden Daniels, Dak Prescott. I mean, they're both of their seasons right now. It's win now. Like they have to start getting consistent, and so we like all players in this matchup, Justin. So that's why they make our start to sit. I like Javonte Williams because I like the goal line touches he's going to get in this game. I think you got big playmakers in George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb potentially and Jake Ferguson that can get the Cowboys deep into the red zone at the 8-9 yard line. And Javonte can kind of take it from there, score a touchdown. I give it to him 2 times. He's going to have, I think, 2 touchdowns. Might not get 100 yards, but it's one of those multi-touchdown days. We're kind of like you see last week with Cam Skadden, who doesn't hit 100 yards, but still gets you like 2 or 3 touchdowns. Kind of those stat lines. I'm thinking maybe like 60, 70 yards, maybe 80 yards. Not 100 yards, but still multi-touchdown game where he's getting those carries. He's getting those touches at the goal line. I love it. Kind of to bounce about what you said about Bill Croskey-Merritt here. He's leading the Commanders in touches, carries. I mean, rushing, and he's like pretty much leading all here. He's the no like easily the guy here. Obviously, they'll throw in a little bit of Jeremy McNichols, and they still have a strong rushing game with Daniels there at quarterback. But you know what? Even last week he fumbled, and they still gave it to him. And even late in that game where they needed to throw, it was raining. They still gave him some carries, and so I know the matchup last week wasn't all that well, but he still got over 50 yards with a fumble. And honestly, I really thought the matchup was bad for Croskey-Merritt. But here you got a dome stadium, Sunday afternoon, 3 o'clock, a divisional battle for the ages right now at this point of the season. I love both of these running backs. And Justin, if you were able to kind of start off your first couple rounds of this year's draft with some good wide receivers and then got to these 2 running backs, there's no doubt you're about 5-1, 6-0, maybe at least 4-2.
Yeah, no, I completely agree there. I love Javonte this week. I love if you were able to get those are the best feelings when you can get those guys in the mid to later rounds and they hit.
Yeah.
And you're just like, you feel that reward of it. Definitely feeling that with like Emeka Egbuka. You see that across the board with, oh my God, a number of players like Tyler Warren. I'm just thinking of my own
Yeah.
team right
Or
now.
maybe like a Jordan Mason potentially who could,
Yeah,
continue having a good season. Yeah.
Drake May.
Scadaboo as
Yeah,
well.
perfect. Scadaboo's
Yeah.
been great. So there's a list of them. There's a laundry list of them. But yeah, those are the best feelings, and I think both in the same game will have good performances. You want to have players in high-scoring games, and that's what this is going to be. We'll move to wide receiver, where I have Jameson Williams. I don't love Jameson Williams as a consistent play for your fantasy lineups every single week, but last week we saw him get in the end zone, and this week he plays Tampa Bay, which I just love the matchup there. And you were right. We talked about it a little earlier. Baker Mayfield and Tampa Bay are going to be able to score and keep this game competitive. And Detroit, playing against a bad Tampa Bay defense, they're going to be able to score at will. Jared Goff, I think, is in line for a really good game, and he's going to have a big touchdown to Jameson Williams.
Yeah, Justin, I love Jameson Williams. He surprised me scoring a touchdown last week on Sunday Night Football on the road in Kansas City, and now I love this matchup at home against a Tampa Bay defense that is beatable. And I feel like the Lions have this thing where they lose on the road, and it's kind of like they made it close, and then obviously after the game, an incident happened where they're even more embarrassed because they were at fault, in my opinion. Even though it's so I feel like they have something to prove on Monday Night Football. Mind you, I think last year Baker gave them their first loss of 2024. So, and this is a team that has some history with each other. Obviously, they played in the playoffs 2 years ago, which sent Detroit to the NFC title game. But you know what, Justin, this is going to be a good matchup. I really hope Mike Evans can play so this can be back and forth. But Jameson Williams, he'll get those 2 to 3 catches. It'll be for like 120 yards and a touchdown. And so sometimes you'll have 4 catches but 2 touchdowns. But still, he's not a guy that gets heavily targeted. I understand why you don't think he's a start every week. But with bye weeks going on, like for me in the elite league that we have together, I have Garrett Wilson who's hurt. So I'm like, you know what? Hey, Jameson Williams Monday night. What else can I do? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so he's a great flex play. He's going to be a guy that you can like from weeks 4 to like 11, 12. That's going to be great to start Jameson Williams, especially on a primetime slate like Monday Night Football against Tampa Bay. For me, I'm going to kind of go with a little bit more of a more obvious choice here. Obviously, Puka Nacua is probably going to miss this game. And I feel like in London, Matt Stafford, he just needs that one guy against an okay defense in Jacksonville. JSN last week shredded them. On the road, he shredded this Jacksonville defense. And I feel like Matt Stafford, historically, he's going to have that one really good wide receiver that he can target 10, 11, 15 times a game. And it's no better than Devontae Adams for me. I just think that this week in London, Jacksonville, neutral crowd, the Rams, they want to add another victory here. But they did lose Puka Nacua. And I feel like this match is good. Not to mention last year, Devontae Adams went ballistic crazy on Jaguars against the Jaguars when he was a member of the New York Jets. Him and Aaron Rodgers, I think that was one of their final games together. And he went for 160, 2 touchdowns. It was ridiculous. Obviously, it's a little bit different of a coaching staff from last year, this year for Jacksonville. But still, I think that, like I mentioned, it really comes down to Matt Stafford with an historic wide receiver like Devontae Adams. You get them for one game without no Puka Nacua here. I think next week they have their bye. So I think that's kind of what Sean McVay's thought process here. Let's get our top guy the targets this week, and then we'll go on a rest here. So I like Devontae Adams this week.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. With no Puka there, man, Matthew Stafford is going to target Devontae Adams 10 plus times for sure.
Yeah.
And Jacksonville just gave up a huge game to Jackson Smith and Jigba. I know JSN is one of the best in the league, but Adams can still play really well at a high level. So I agree. I think Adams is a great play this week. A guy that Stafford's going to have to target often. We'll move to tight ends now. Where I got Harold Fannin Jr. going. We both got kind of
Yeah.
deeper pools, but I think David Njoku is currently unlikely to play. We'll monitor that situation. But when he got hurt last week against the Steelers, Harold Fannin ended up with going 7 receptions for 81 yards with Dylan Gabriel. I love that volume for a tight end. And that was against the Steelers defense. Now he gets the Miami Dolphins defense. I love the matchup for Cleveland and for Harold Fannin. I think he's in line for a lot of volume. And he's in line to have a great day. Get him in your DraftKings, even if you need to pick him up. If you have, a bye week or an injury, I really like him this week.
Yeah, Justin, you know what? I really like Harold Fannin Jr. Here's a pretty fun fact so far through the season. Harold Fannin Jr. is literally second in targets for the Browns, right? And then I want to say he's first in receiving yards for the Browns. So he's going to get that. He's going to get that usage, those targets there. Obviously, Dylan Gabriel is still trying to figure it out there. But what better matchup, like you mentioned, at home against the Dolphins? I think it's prime for them to really have a great offensive breakout there. Even if you have Judkins there, I think no doubt this is going to be a great matchup. And Harold Fannin Jr., I think he scored a touchdown. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? I do. Yeah, I do remember him getting the end zone. I think it was one of the overseas games. But like I mentioned, Dalen Gabriel, and even with Njoku potentially playing, it's still Fannin's still going to be the guy there. He's getting tons of targets, and he's receiving, second in on the team and receive or first in receiving on the team. So I love it, Justin. He's going to get those targets. For me, I'm going to kind of hit the time travel machine a couple years back there. I would say this time 10 years ago, Zach Ertz was a top tight end in fantasy, maybe like 8 or 9 years ago. But you know what, Justin? I feel like he's coming back to one of the top tight ends. He has a great record kind of facing the Cowboys, and I feel like Jaden Daniels was able to find him last week in the end zone. And he's kind of the only guy there for Washington. He's in this offense with Cliff Kingsbury there. They're going to get him targets there with no Terry McLaurin. The matchup is great. I mean, Justin, we love this matchup with Dallas, Washington, 3 o'clock. They've got a lot of great storylines there, a lot of great key potential fantasy implications there that we're starting. And Zach Ertz is a guy that, like Justin, in a couple of my leagues, he's still out there. Even after a few of my leagues, I think he's still out there. I picked him up in one of our leagues a few weeks ago, started him, and he was a better start than Mark Andrews for me. And so he's a guy that I'm going to just start every week because Jaden Daniels is going to find him. This offense is going to look for their tight ends here. No one on the depth chart that I'm really concerned about. The matchup's good. I mean, this is a guy that you can start every week now. I mean, if you are having tight end issues with Kittle being in and out the lineup, maybe Bowers is still going to potentially miss a couple more weeks for you. Maybe you missed out on getting maybe a Dallas Goedert who's been playing well as well. You can get a guy like Zach Ertz, Justin, for the cheap. Don't have to trade for him. He is still on waiver wires. I'm seeing in a few of the leagues that I'm in. So definitely go get Zach Ertz right now. Plug and play him. He is a must start for sure this week.
Yeah, I love this pick for Zach Ertz. He's going to be on my super starts, my bold predictions for this week to be the tight end one. I really have high hopes for him. I was looking back. His 2 matchups against the Cowboys last season with the Commanders, his only 2 matchups as a Commander against the Dallas Cowboys, he scored in both of those games. And in his 2 career highest performances were against the Dallas Cowboys. Yes, that was in his prime with Philadelphia, but he's got familiarity there. And
Oh
then if
yeah.
you look just at this season in particular, people could say he's had a disappointing year. I would firmly disagree with that. In weeks 1 and 2, which were 2 games with Jaden Daniels, he was the tight end 2 through those 2 games. Then Jaden Daniels gets hurt, misses the next few games. He's not good. Candidly, 5 points, 5 points, and 0 points. You get a fat goose egg in the first game with Daniels back. But now with like a full week of practice with Daniels again, he goes for 6 for 43 and a touchdown. So I am all on board for Zach Ertz this week. And the really sad thing I just realized while we're going through this whole episode with our starts, I currently play a friend of ours, Trey Kraft, in our big league. And he has Baker Mayfield and Javonte Williams and Devontae Adams and Jameson Williams and Zach Ertz all have found themselves on the starts of the week list, and that's not
Wow.
including Jahmyr Gibbs and Cam Scatterboo. So I might be in trouble this week because we do like a lot of players that are on his team. So we'll see. But I agree. Zach Ertz is a great play. I like Harold Fannin. These are guys that are not at the high end of your tight end list, so they could be available. So go check it out. And then if you have them, you want an upside play, I'd swing for the fences here with these two guys. We'll move to the sits of the week, though. Guys who should not be in your starting lineup. And I got Tony Pollard, and this seems kind of clear that Tennessee has not been good this year. They have, in fact, fired their coach, Brian Callahan, because they just haven't been good this year. And Tony Pollard, his work has gone down over the last 4 weeks. He had 91% of snaps to 86 to 73 to all the way down to 43 last week. And Tyjae Spears outsnapped him for the first time in the season in his second game back from his injury. So I think Tyjae is becoming the lead back here for the Titans. And I think for the new coach, which is Mike McCoy, which is funny, he used to coach the Chargers a handful of years ago.
Yeah.
He wasn't very good there, but this is a new breath of life here, and I think that the Titans are going to want to see what they have in their young talent. And so I think we're going to get more usage for Spears. And in this matchup, it's not a great matchup. They play the New England Patriots, a revenge game for Mike Vrabel. So I really don't like Tony Pollard this week.
Yeah, Justin, you make a great point. I mean, honestly, this offense is going to change going forward. We don't know what to expect from them. Tony Pollard has been very disappointing. And I like Spears. I mean, he's a guy that they've kind of, teased there, even when Derrick Henry, in his last few years there. And so I definitely love Tajay Spears to kind of get more involved. And it kind of makes you skeptical about Tony Pollard. So definitely, maybe he might need to be traded. If Tony Pollard can be traded like from Washington to another team that needs a running back, that'd be phenomenal there. But as long as he's in Tennessee, he's definitely a guy that I have to just sit and observe and see how they do in this new offense with McCoy now as head coach. And for me, Justin, I'm going to go with my sit. I'm going to go with Jackson Dart here. And I know a lot of people are very excited there. Obviously, last Thursday night, Jackson Dart had a phenomenal game on the road at home, MetLife against the reigning champs. But I just think this week in Denver, it's going to be different. I just think that Denver right now, it's tough to already play at 3 o'clock in Denver already. They're going up against this leading sack leader right now, Nick Benito. He's got 8 sacks, Justin.
That's right.
This offensive line, I don't think, is really strong enough to kind of pass protect a guy like Nick Benito. There's a couple other guys on that D line as well for Denver that's just as great. You got no neighbors there to kind of go one on one with the Pat Surtain. So I just feel like it's going to be really tough to move the ball. They're going to need a really big game out of Scatterboo for Jackson Dart to be functional in this matchup. I think definitely along the way through the season, Jackson Dart's going to have great matchups. Not this week, though. It's just tough against one of the best defenses in fantasy right now. And then, not to mention that, last week they got some rest. They got to play Justin Fields, and they, obviously we saw how great they were, right? But now at home in Denver, loud crowd. I just feel like this Giants offense without no neighbors for Pat Surtain to really be challenged. I just feel like it's all bad for Jackson Dart. What we saw last week as a dysfunctional defense in Philadelphia that Jackson Dart was able to. He's still a great rookie quarterback, and he's going to be great in his career, just not this week in Denver.
Yeah, I mean, the Broncos are second best against the quarterback position in fantasy football. They've allowed 3 games with under 10 points to the quarterback, so they've been pretty locked down. For Jackson Dart, it's hard to jump off the wagon after jumping on after what we saw Thursday night. They do get a little bit of extra time. Not a bye week, of course, but they played on Thursday, so they get a little extra days of rest. And Denver's coming back from overseas, so there's a handful of things that could make me excited about Dart, but he is on the road. It doesn't look pretty, and I think they're gonna try to utilize Cam Scatterbo a lot.
I will add one last thing, Justin. There's a couple better matchups that I'm looking at that you can actually start over if you're having maybe like a Josh Allen's on bye, maybe no Lamar Jackson. Kind of, so I have some options here, Justin. Maybe a Trevor Lawrence home with LA, or actually it's in London against LA Rams. Maybe he can, Brian Thomas can have a great game. Maybe a Michael Penix Jr. Sunday Night Football. I know it's on the road, but you got to remember San Francisco doesn't have Bosa or Fred Warner no more in that defense, so they're losing piece by piece every week. So maybe Penix can have a great game. What he had last week on Monday Night Football. Maybe obviously Spencer Rattler of Chicago. Maybe a guy that you're not really considering. I'm looking down the list. Joe Flacco on Thursday Night Football at home isn't a bad option. Maybe Mac Jones ends up starting at home against the Falcons. I like that matchup. So you know what? There's other options. I'm thinking if you're having Jackson Dart.
Yeah, well, for me, I am in that same boat where I have Josh Allen in our big league, and obviously he is not playing this week; he's on bye, and so
Yeah.
I went and I picked up Aaron Rodgers
Oh,
against
that's a
Cincinnati.
great play. There you go.
So that is another guy you can do. I was considering Flacco, maybe even Dylan Gabriel, but I would go
Yeah.
Jackson Dart over Gabriel, even though Gabriel is the better matchup. But yeah, I agree. Dart, yeah, I temper my expectations for sure. A rookie quarterback on the road in Mile High can be a little dangerous, so I like it there. We'll move to kickers of the week, where I got Michael Badgley. Yes, he's taken over for Spencer Schrader, who shredded his knee, unfortunately, and is out for the season. And Badgley, if you remember that name, it probably is familiar. He used to kick for the Chargers, and he had a good season or two there. So he's a solid kicker. He played really well last week, and the Colts are right now riding as like the best offense in football. So I like Badgley.
Yeah, Justin, I definitely love it too. I think he's definitely gonna have a great game against the Chargers. So I have him in one of our leagues as well. So I like Bagley this week. For me, Justin, I'm gonna go with Will Lutz. I just think that there's going to be opportunities at home for Will Lutz to kick some big time field goals there. I think the Giants defense is they're middle of the pack. I wouldn't say they're bad. They're not terrible. So they're definitely going to get some stops on Bo Nix there, who's really reliant on Cortland Sutton, who's heavily reliant on Cortland Sutton there. Cortland Sutton's not really getting the ball. This offense is kind of slow. So maybe they get past the 50, maybe their 40s, 30s, and Will Lutz hit some big time field goals. Will Lutz is a guy that Sean Payton is really familiar with and has a lot of trust because he was, I think he was drafted, or he at least started his career with the Saints when Sean Payton was there. So this is a guy that is always going to have Sean Payton's trust, so it has my trust starting in my fantasy leagues.
Yeah, I think Denver's a good enough offense to get across the 50, to get in field goal range at home. And it's we're not too late into the season where the weather's bad, so I think it's good for Will Lutz there.
Yeah.
But Dween Nation, those are our starts and sits for week 7 of the fantasy football season. It's crazy to be here already. But if you have any questions, any thoughts, any comments, drop them below. We are here to help you guys win your fantasy matchups and then win your fantasy football championships. No matter what record you are still in the good fight, so keep fighting. But thank you guys for listening, and Janoah, send us out.
Yo, Dween Nation. This was our starts and sits already. We're here at week 7 with what has been so far a great NFL season, guys. So we love you guys. Thank you for watching. Let us know who you guys are starting this week. You're sitting, how your records are, what's going on in your leagues, how do you feeling about the season going so far. But thank you guys for watching. We love you guys. And as always, peace.